I'm gonna be honest, this is one of those what ifs on the channel that I never figured I would ever be doing, but that's when one of my thumbnail makers ended up sending me this dope thumbnail that was too good to pass up on, and so we find ourselves with a new thumbnail and a new video on the channel, which is, what if Deku had a teleportation quirk? This is going to be having a more goofy feel to it, and so it's not going to be too accurate to what I actually think would happen, more or less changing a bunch of things just to make more of a like chill comedy like story. That said, if you guys enjoyed the video, you know what to do, but with no further ado, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
We start our story off in the beginning of the anime with a little bit of a flashback explaining how not everybody's created equal. Eventually we flash forward to the day where the teacher would walk in and Izuku would get bullied by Bakugo, only for Bakugo to shoot an explosion at Deku's desk, setting him flying back into a wall, with everybody not really minding. This was actually one of those scenes that I was so confused with why the teacher didn't say immediately, "Bakugo, leave him alone," but I digress. Eventually the day would end, and when Izuku would be packing up his journal to leave, Bakugo goes on to grab it as he would say, "Hey Deku, what's this?" Taking it out of Izuku's hands, as Izuku would say, "Bakugo, come on, can I please have it back?" With Bakugo being like, "Nah, I'll take it from here." As Izuku looks towards the direction of Bakugo with anger in his eyes, and he would flash an explosion in his face saying, "You gonna do something?" With Deku saying, No, I'm not." And Bakugo from here looks towards Deku as he would say, "That's what I thought. Hey, catch this." As from here, he would throw it at one of his goonies and he would say, "Hero notes? What's somebody like you doing taking hero notes? You're not even going to become a hero. What do you even need these for?" As he tosses it back to Bakugo, and Bakugo says, "That's true," blowing it up before tossing it out the window. As from here, he goes on to look to Deku and tell him to not try to enter UA, or else that is going to be him next time. As Deku, looking towards the direction of the book that was just thrown down into the floor and into a small little like pond slash like water container thingy, would then look towards Izuku as he would tell him, "Remember that." As Izuku turns to Bakugo, looks down at the ground and just stays silent, before Bakugo walks away and says, "Oh hey, and also, if you want a chance to get a quirk, maybe you should consider swan diving off of the roof. Maybe then you'll actually have the capabilities of getting something in your next life." Walking out as he would begin laughing. It would be at this point that Bakugo and his goonies would begin walking outside. And one change that I'm going to be implementing is that Bakugo, he ends up forgetting something in the classroom. And so halfway upon reaching that weird alleyway that he would have gotten to in the original, Bakugo turns back, thinking to himself, "Wait, I left something back at class." Looking back at his goonies, he would tell them that he's just going to be going home after getting this, so they should just head off. They look at him and would say, "All right, Bakugo." As Bakugo goes over to the classroom, and once he makes it there, Bakugo then makes his way outside. Simultaneously, Izuku would have went to the roof of the building and he would be thinking about everything, about how his life is unfair, and just simply everything in that day would have gotten to him. That morning his mom would have had a little bit of a mental breakdown and Izuku would not have been having the best day. So Bakugo telling him to take a swan dive off the roof, it hit him like nobody's business. Izuku was honestly thinking of really doing it. And so Izuku just looked down at the ground before then seeing Bakugo and saying that it's Bakugo's fault. It's all Bakugo's fault. It's the world's fault. Maybe in the next life he will be born with a new quirk. And so he jumps. Immediate regret would hit Deku as he would realize that he's free falling, and he would be about 1 second before hitting the ground before time stops around him. A strange figure walking up to him with a jean jacket, black jeans, white shirt, and some random white shoes. He then walks over to him as he stops him mid-air using a telekinesis quirk, then asking him, "You think that this world's unfair?" Before Izuku looks at him and asks, "Who's he?" before asking what in the world just happened, like did time just stop? He would say, "Don't worry about that. I just want to know, do you think everything's unfair? Do you want to have a better chance at life? Do you maybe want A quirk? As Izuku looks at him and says, I'd love to have a quirk, but that's not how it works. As you know, Xehther, yup, it's me. I pulled up and I saved Deku. As Xehther looks right at Midoriya and would say, you know, I could give you a quirk. I could give you any one of these quirks. As simultaneously in his hand, this strange like this holographic stuff would pop up and just a list of quirks would go. He swipes and it would be kind of like a Russian roulette where the one that it last spins on is the quirk that he's gonna get. Eventually it lands on teleportation. As Xehther looks at it and says, huh, interesting. This is the quirk that I'm going to be giving you. Snapping his fingers, as Izuku, who would have been free falling and Bakugo would have watched, he was thinking to himself that there's no way that Izuku actually did it. Would then try to rush over there to see if he's okay, as Izuku would be nowhere to be found. Bakugo thinking to himself that he must have been seeing things, that he's just crazy. He must have just not had enough sleep last night. As Izuku would find himself back at home, that's where Izuku wished he could be at. And it would be at this moment that Izuku would realize that he just teleported. Whatever that was, whoever that was, he gave him a quirk. And now Deku has a chance, an opportunity, Deku would think. As from here, Izuku would make his way outside and think to himself that what had just happened was impossible, but it was real. Deku knew that jump, that was real. This was no dream, this was no illusion. This is reality. And Izuku from here would think hard about where he wants to go to next, thinking about his favorite sandwich shop. Izuku then teleporting there instantly, as from here we would switch perspectives to All Might, who would continue chasing after the sludge villain who would eventually capture the body of a random and get away. Sadly, sludge villain survives. However, going back to Izuku, we would see Izuku jumping up in the air, being so happy, celebrating, with people looking at him wondering wondering what that kid's so happy about. With somebody yelling out, "You must really love your sandwiches, huh?" As Izuku says, "Yeah, I love them when they're 12 inches. And the guy would say, you know, I think 6 inches is the perfect sandwich, but you know, that's just me personally. As Izuku looks towards him with a little bit of a strange expression, and from here, Izuku just goes on to pretty much go inside the shop, order whatever he wants, and make his way home. Then going to his favorite boba place, as he would get himself a nice little mango smoothie, right, to go along with everything. Izuku then teleporting back home and realizing that he was using his quirk out in the public. Going on to realize that he probably shouldn't be doing that, but you know, he did just unlock his quirk, and it's not like anybody can say anything to him, right? Deku would think. And so Izuku would make his way back home, where he would think to himself that he's so glad that he has a quirk now, thinking to himself if he could ever see that guy again. And no, you're not gonna see me, Brody. Like I'm really him. Like, you can't just see me all the time. Like, I choose whether I want to see you or you're gonna see me. And this time you got lucky. I decided to pick you to give the quirk to. Nah, but seriously, what ends up happening is Izuku realizing that he now has a quirk, would spend the next 10 months training on it and deciding that he's definitely going to be surprising people with it. He would go on to watch cartoons, and it would be at this point that Izuku would watch one cartoon in particular, a character by the name of Bugs Bunny, who breaks the laws of physics and does such wacky things. There would be a particular scene where he watches as the bunny itself would punch this guy with a shotgun, being Elmer Fudd, as he would punch him from one side, then another, and Izuku would get an idea. Could I potentially do something like that with my quirk? Deku would think to himself, there has to be a way, right? Izuku would think to himself, as from here, Izuku decides that he's going to give it his best shot, and he might as well try, right? And so what would pretty much end up going down is that Izuku decides that it's probably in his best interest to maybe potentially give this thing a try, right? And so what would pretty much end up happening is that Izuku goes over to the beach one day, right? Now, at this moment, Izuku goes on to toss a ball straight into the air, as from here, Izuku closes his eyes and focuses as much as possible, then teleporting to the left side of the ball, right side, down, and up before the ball would land, and Izuku would be inches from the floor before teleporting back to a safe location for Izuku not to fall. And from here, Izuku would lunge into the air, yelling out at the top of his lungs, "Woohoo!" no. Now, I would obviously actually scream it out to the top of my lungs just to really sell it, but I can't right now because all of my family's sleeping. Since I've been recording my videos at like 1 or 3 in the morning, my sleep schedule is straight death. Like, I'm out here waking up at 3 in the afternoon. It's not okay, but I do it all for you guys, you know, because I need to get these videos out for you guys, and I need to indulge in a little bit of fun during the day, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that said though, ladies and gentlemen, continuing on with the story, Izuku would spend the next 10 months using different varieties of moves with his teleportation quirk, and I actually want you guys down below to comment some cool ideas. Now, Izuku can't open teleport portals, but he can teleport at a moment's notice. So let's say you're running away, right? Izuku teleports next to you, punches you, teleports to your left, punches you, and just teleports underneath you, kicks you in the nuts. Like, he could really do anything. Not only that, but Izuku could actually teleport more people as long as they're holding on to him, and he can teleport singular objects. Now, they can't be too large because, like, you know, like it's kind of a little hard right now, but you know, he's working on it during the 10 months. Right now, he can teleport objects as large as a car, and you know, that is pretty OP, but you know, nothing too crazy, right? So if he really wanted to, he could teleport a car on top of somebody, or a villain to be more specific, and it would probably crush that said villain. So that's something cool. And so what would pretty much end up happening after this is eventually we time skip to the day of the entrance exam. This day being a very special day for Izuku, seeing as today's the day that Izuku's finally going to prove to everybody why he deserves a spot in the academy. Izuku's proud of himself, proud of everything that he's done, and he's finally going to show to the world that if he had a quirk, he would have been something. He could have done something with his life. And all the people who called him a loser and an outcast and all of the rude names can finally be proven wrong. Izuku enters the area with a little bit of a changed personality. Nowadays, since Izuku has a teleportation quirk, he's become a little more cocky when it comes to it, right? During this time that he would have had off, Izuku would have actually ended up meeting a new friend. Now, this friend would have actually ended up being Kaminari. Now, this is going to be one of those Izuku and Kaminari friendship what ifs. So during this time, Izuku would have actually teleported to an area to a pool, right? Because he wanted a fresh swim. And he sees Kaminari straight spying on some girls, with Izuku wondering to himself why he's doing that, right? Then Kaminari goes on to walk over to him and ask him if he just used his quirk, with him saying that that's awesome. What is his quirk? Izuku saying, oh, it's just teleportation. Kaminari thinking that it's awesome, as from here he would ask Izuku if he can teleport him somewhere, with Izuku saying sure. Kaminari saying, I've really got to use the bathroom, can you teleport me over there? And Izuku just being like, alright, sure, inside, as Kaminari's like, yes please. And from here, Izuku and Kaminari would both be teleported into the women's restroom, watching as all of the girls would be straight about to change into their bikinis, as Kaminari would be drooling. And from here, a shriek could be heard as Izuku instantly teleports out of there, with Kaminari holding onto his back, seeing as a girl was about to rush and hit him. And from here, Kaminari would let out the biggest laugh, saying thanks to Izuku and saying sorry for tricking him, with Izuku asking what in the world he did that for, and Kaminari saying that he didn't mean to be too bad. And Izuku's like, dude, that was such a pervert move, with Kaminari saying, come on, you telling me you didn't like it? As from here, Kaminari points down to the direction of Izuku's third leg and says, look, that tells me otherwise. As Izuku's like, what are you doing looking at that? And Kaminari's like, I don't know, it's like staring at me, with Izuku covering his hands and then being like, you weirdo. And from here, Izuku goes back to that pool like for the following next couple days, finally bumping into Kaminari once more, as he would end up saying sorry to Deku and saying that he thinks he's pretty cool, asking if he's down to hang out. After this, they end up actually training together on Dagoma Beach, and he and Kaminari would have ended up becoming very good friends, if I might add, right? And so what pretty much ends up happening is Kaminari was able to change Izuku's personality quite a bit, giving a little bit of a perverted nature to Izuku that he doesn't have in the original, and giving him that bit of cockiness, seeing as Izuku would have actually ended up having somebody who he can kind of feel cool around. Kaminari thinking that Izuku is an awesome person, so Izuku finally started feeling confidence in himself, right? And that would be an extremely positive thing for Deku. This would be great because Kaminari gets a friend, Izuku gets a friend, and it's ultimately the biggest win-win situation we could possibly find ourselves in. And so we continue on the story with Izuku and Kaminari waving at each other from the inside of the UA entrance exams, as they would be pretty much waving to each other, and Bakugo would wonder why Izuku looks so happy. I mean, how could somebody without a quirk even feel a little bit confident in his abilities for this test? There's no way that Izuku could be feeling confident, is there? He would think. As from here, Bakugo decides, nah, like I have to be like dreaming or something. Like there's no way that bastard Deku has a quirk or something like that. As from here, what would end up happening is that Bakugo would end up going to his area, and Izuku would as well. As Izuku from here, as soon as the entrance gates would open, Izuku would immediately teleport straight towards the top of the highest building, and from here, looking onto one of the robots, as somebody was about to destroy it, Izuku would get in the way, teleporting in front of it as he drops a car that would have been in the area on top of the robot, with the robot instantly exploding, and the portions of the explosion that would have been going off would be kind of like fireworks to Deku. From here, Izuku, who would have actually been allowed to bring in a support item, seeing as he doesn't really have that much of a destructive quirk, so he has these gauntlets that he would have had made for him by a special like quirk company that wants to make quirkless people stronger, and these gauntlets would give him immense strength. They're like these silver gauntlets that he can wear, and honestly, they're awesome. Izuku going down onto a robot as he punches it, teleporting to the next one, kicking it, teleporting to the next one, punching it, and ultimately teleporting one robot on top of another, teleporting another robot on top of another, and ultimately just doing his due diligence and destroying these robots in so many ways that people would become like shocked. From here, Izuku would notice Kaminari was struggling with a robot teleporting next to him, teleporting on top of a building, and telling Kaminari to go for it, as there would be a grand total of like 3 or 5 robots together, and Kaminari would let out a massive amount of electricity, which would easily stun all of the robots, with Izuku then teleporting Kaminari back down to the ground, and Kaminari dapping Izuku up, as you can just hear that smack, and over the cameras the hero would watch as Izuku and that boy would seem to have some sort of chemistry going on. It would be at this moment that the ground would begin rumbling, and at this point the 0-pointer robot would finally be revealed. From here, Izuku notices that somebody needs saving, and without a second thought, Deku teleports, grabs Uraraka, teleports away, and from here Izuku would teleport on top of the robot's head, as he would punch down at the head of the robot, and he would make his way towards the circuitry. As what Izuku would do is look towards the direction of the wires, and bro just punches it, as immediately the robot begins to like start exploding from the head, and Deku teleports away, realizing that his best bet wasn't to just blow the robot out of proportion, seeing as Deku couldn't do that. His best bet was probably going to be to try to find a weak spot, and what better weak spot for a gigantic robot than for its head, the smallest part of it. Izuku, thinking on his feet, would quickly be able to use his teleportation quirk to get out of there and get one of the highest markings in all of UA history when it comes to the quirk when it comes to the quirk test part that they were outside with the robots. Regardless though, days would pass and Izuku would get his acceptance letter with a scholarship on top of that, adding to Izuku's newfound confidence that he would have got hanging out with Kaminari, asking Kaminari what he got, and Kaminari saying that he actually ended up getting 4th place when it comes to robot points and the test, saying that he probably would have been higher if he wasn't so dumb when it comes to academics, with Izuku saying he can teach him a couple of things. He may not be the smartest, but he's definitely not dumb by any means. And so, Kaminari and Deku would hang out till the first day of UA High. Eventually, things would go down just like they do in canon, Aizawa explaining to them all that they need to make their way towards the outside portion, and Izuku actually almost getting pressed by a Bakugo, who would have tried to go up to him and ask him what in the world he thinks he's doing actually going to UA, right? But when Bakugo turned the corner to the alleyway to try to, beat up on Deku, Deku just teleported away. Bakugo being confused at where Deku went, but once he sees him in the class, Bakugo stands up, stopping the argument with Ida, as he would ask him what in the world he's doing here. A quirkless loser like him can't possibly have made it to UA. That there's no way that they're announcing outcasts, he must have cheated. With Deku saying, "Nah Bakugo, I didn't cheat. I just did this, teleporting behind Bakugo, to his left, to his right, to the roof, back to the ground. As Bakugo would ask, how in the world? And Deku would say, he was a little bit of a late bloomer. And so Bakugo looks to the direction of Izuku with him gritting his teeth, and Izuku saying that for now, he definitely is going to become a hero, and there's not a thing Bakugo can do to stop him. Bakugo from here would get angry as he would begin rushing at Midoriya, and a loud voice would call out as it would say, "Stop that before I expel you." As Bakugo tries to shoot an explosion at Deku, but Deku and Bakugo would have both been stopped by Aizawa, who wouldn't have allowed both of them to use their quirks, with Aizawa grabbing onto Bakugo with his scarf and telling him to stand down. One more of those outbursts and he's out of here, with him saying, "Got it?" As Bakugo would say, "Let me go." "Got it." Damn. As from here he walks away and Izuku looks towards the direction of Aizawa as he would say, it's one of the greatest heroes, Aizawa. As from here Kaminari says, "That's Aizawa?" And the class finally perks up, only to have massive amounts of respect for him, with them saying that as him as their teacher, they're definitely gonna go far. Aizawa internally would feel very good about that, but he would not say nothing, keeping a cool head as he would tell them all to meet him outside. Eventually, Aizawa tossing a ball at Deku, with Aizawa telling Deku that he needs to throw this ball, with Izuku simply thinking to himself that he needs to stay inside of the circle himself, with Aizawa wondering what in the world he means by that, and Deku saying, nothing, it's just that I could probably do a lot better if I could maybe leave the confines of the circle once the ball leaves my hands, with Aizawa saying, "So you want to throw the ball and then use your quirk? Go for it, kid. It's not like that isn't a part of your quirk." With Deku saying, "Great." As from here, Izuku throws the ball up, catches it, and teleports as far as he possibly can. As the registering thing would not register a thing, Deku dropping it back down in the US and then teleporting right back to Japan. As Aizawa looks at the monitor thing and it would tell him so many meters that the thing would pretty much say like, it would say so many, it would be like over 10,000 meters. Like, oh, like it'd be crazy. But that's not the point. It'd be like 100,000 meters, right? And so Aizawa would say, "Where did this thing go? Like the US?" As you know, Izuku says, "Exactly." And Aizawa would definitely be impressed by Izuku, with Bakugo wondering to himself, when in the world a loser like him was able to get a hold of such a powerful and useful quirk, thinking to himself that that's definitely not going to be staying like that Bakugo is going to make sure that he's the one who remains on top. And so what would pretty much end up happening is Izuku and everybody else would continue the quirk apprehension tests, as eventually all of them would find themselves on their way home, and Deku and Kaminari would be texting each other, with Izuku texting Kaminari a funny gif emoji of an angry Bakugo saying that he definitely wanted all the smoke, and Izuku would say, "I wasn't even scared. He used to bully me when I was a kid, but I'd love to see him try now." With Kaminari saying, "It'd be pretty cool if you actually got to fight him at UA." With Izuku thinking, "I just might." Part 1 of What If Deku Had a Teleportation Quirk ended up doing pretty well, so here's part 2.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Pick up our story in the perspective of Izuku. Now, it would be at this point that Deku would be looking towards the door, having just pretty much gotten through with the entirety of his day at UA, lunch, and everything else included, with Kaminari sitting next to him, making a couple of jokes as he points at Momo. From here, a large silhouette would come by the door as it would dash in, and suddenly you hear a beaming loud voice say, "I am here." Suddenly, everybody in the classroom would begin being shocked as they would notice that the number one hero, All Might, he's right there. They're so close to him and they are going to be taught by him. Everybody would be shocked. Now, of course, they realized that All Might worked at this school just due to the fact that, well, you know, he was the one who gave them their acceptance, letters and stuff like that. So everybody knew All Might was here, but they weren't expecting him to be their own teacher. That said, though, All Might from here goes on to talk to the classroom for a little bit as everybody would get their fangirling and fanboying respectably out of the way, eventually leading All Might to pressing a button and telling them all that to be a hero, you gotta look the part. So here's their hero outfits. Turning towards the wall as it would reveal all of their cases with their hero outfits that they would have sent in to get specifically made for themselves. Eventually everybody would come outside and Izuku's outfit would be something very, very strange. It would be a denim jacket that could hold like a lot of it would be a very flexible denim jacket. He basically wears the Xehther outfit in homage to Xehther being the one who gave him the quirk and all that. He wears these like sturdy combat boots, and he also wears like this gear, these improved gauntlets that help him with his striking strength and all that stuff. And the combat boots come equipped with a little bit of nanotech that allows him to use strength and speed that he never would have had otherwise. Also coming with a utility belt that he could easily pull out, different things such as gas and, smoke screens and like shockers and stuff like that, and a little pocket that has a utility knife, and underneath his gauntlet he would have a portion where a knife can like stick out and stab people, kind of like an Assassin's Creed, like similar to that, right? But ultimately everybody would finally get over to All Might's direction as he would go on and tell them, ha ha ha, you all look great, going on to say to them that from here they're all going to be needing to pick these numbers. They all do so, and immediately All Might would end up showing who's going to be fighting against who. Izuku being shown that he's actually going to be teaming up with Kaminari, and their opponent is going to be Ida and Bakugo. Kaminari and Deku would both be shocked, with Kaminari looking at Deku and saying, dude, you literally called it yesterday. And Izuku saying, I know, I honestly didn't think I was going to fight him this early on. With Kaminari being like, it's awesome, but I guess now you get to have a little bit of a revenge arc, don't you? With Izuku saying, exactly. And from here, the battle would pretty much start. Kaminari saying to himself that this is going to be so easy, with Izuku asking if he could borrow his quirk for a second, and Kaminari saying, of course. From here, what would end up going down is that Izuku, as soon as All Might would say go, would use his teleportation quirk to get himself and Kaminari into the room where Bakugo are at, as from here, Bakugo being shocked, noticing that Izuku just teleported in, would go to shoot an explosion. However, that's when Kaminari would have two utility things thrown at the direction of Ida and Bakugo, as Kaminari lets out his full length of electricity at them, and Bakugo gets sent flying out of the wall, going on to crash onto the ground with a loud thud, with Izuku teleporting behind Bakugo and ultimately kicking Bakugo away as if he was a dog or something. Bakugo getting up coughing as dirt picks up, and he would notice Deku's silhouette, thinking to himself that kick hurt a lot. Izuku from here going on to toss a smoke screen as Bakugo was completely lost as to where Izuku was, and from here Izuku would appear to his left, punching him square in the back of the head, with Bakugo turning around shooting an explosion only to hit nothing, clearing out the smoke, as from here Deku would appear from underneath and punch Bakugo square in the nuts, leading Bakugo to hold his area, and from here fall down onto two knees, as Izuku from here would hold Bakugo by the hair and tell him that his time of getting bullied was over, going on to then knee Bakugo in the stomach, leaving Bakugo pretty much for dead on the ground, as Kaminari, after shocking Ida and letting Izuku get his moment of, awesomeness, would then go on to grab at the bomb, as All Might would say, "Hero Team wins!" They would then end up making their way back towards the examination room, as All Might would be asking the class who the MVP was, with Momo stating that if she had to say who it was, it would definitely be Izuku, although he did take it a tad bit too far with Bakugo and his fighting methods. As from here, everybody else would say, yeah, it was a bit too far, but it's combat, and he didn't really hurt him that bad, I don't think. As from here, Bakugo comes into the area, looks to Izuku with the death stare, and would just be thinking to himself how a quirkless loser like him ended up getting such a strong quirk. As Izuku from here just stands right next to All Might, Bakugo knowing that he can't do anything, and from here the school day would end, as they would all be given permission slips about the USJ and would all be given an exact week to sign them all. Moving on though, we go back to the day in which Ida shows up, and he would pretty much end up proving that he's that guy, showing to everybody that he can be cool-headed in a somber situation, going on to pretty much prove that he should pretty much be the one who was picked as class president. And so we would find ourselves in the USJ situation. However, this time things are going to be going so well for the heroes that it's not even going to be funny. The second that Kurogiri would make his presence known and all of the other students would begin getting teleported around by Kurogiri, Izuku, noticing this from here, would go on to teleport immediately back to UA High, as he goes on to inform the teachers, going into the teacher's lounge and telling All Might to please come. Bursting in, however, he would see All Might in a skeletal form, as he would wonder if that's really All Might in his head. But looking to Nezu, he would say, "Nezu, we need all the pro heroes as fast as possible. The USJ event got ambushed by a couple of villains, and we need your help, All Might." All Might, looking towards Izuku's direction, now buffing up, would say, "Kid, we'll talk about what you just saw later, but for now, get all the heroes ready. They're all here." Izuku then teleporting to each classroom, grabbing all of the heroes and teleporting them all into the USJ, helping Aizawa with backup, and All Might rushing at the main villain Shigaraki. Izuku wouldn't even have to lift a finger when it comes to facing off against these villains, ultimately just helping out when it comes to Tsuyu and Mineta when it comes to their situation. Izuku would end up using a small explosive bomb, as he would toss it into the water, and after doing that would grab onto Tsuyu and Mineta, teleporting them back to the shore, as the water that would have been with the area where the villains were at would explode, and it would cause a little bit of a small tsunami, as all of the water would end up shooting out and the villains would get taken out immediately. Snipe would be using his quirk to pretty much take out villains from a long range distance, and heroes and villains would be having a gigantic titanic clash, with Shigaraki saying, "It's not fair, they have a teleporter too, retreat Kurogiri," with Kurogiri pretty much having to jump in the way and saving Shigaraki, as Shigaraki would get shot with multiple bullet wounds and ultimately would end up escaping, leading to the USJ event pretty much being evaded entirely, all thanks to Izuku Midoriya, who was able to jump in the way and be the bravest one and smartest one there to know exactly what it was that they had to do to make sure that the whole situation could easily be avoided. That said though, continuing on with today's story, we then jump over towards the 1 week break period that all the students would end up getting, and because of this 1 week break period, Izuku would end up deciding that he's going to be training with Kaminari. Himself and Kaminari ending up getting a little bit of significant boost to their quirks, but nothing too crazily insane. Izuku from here making his way towards the classroom, as he notices that the class would have a bit of a strange aura behind it. Walking inside, immediately noticing a fired up Uraraka, as she goes up to him and says, "Are you ready for the UA festival?" And Izuku saying, "Right, that was pretty soon. I forgot about that." And from here, everybody would make their way outside, noticing that there's a pretty big crowd. Bakugo going on to call them extras, as Izuku would grab onto Kaminari and teleport them away, Momo asking if he can help her out too, and Izuku ultimately teleporting back in, grabbing Momo as well, and teleporting her all the way back to her house. Momo thanking Izuku and asking him if he would like to come inside, like she can do something for him, like offer him something to drink, just trying to be polite with a smile. Izuku looking towards Momo would say, I mean, sure, yeah, thanks, as he would walk into the Momo Yaoyorozu residence, and from here he would make his way towards the dining room table, which would be massive, mind you, and Izuku would be sitting literal he's sitting very far basically, right? It's a very, very long table that can seat like 30 people, and Momo's on one side and Deku's on the other, as Deku would say, "Kind of a big table, don't you think?" With Momo saying, "Yeah, it is rather big. Would you like to come over here?" Izuku teleporting to the seat right next to her and activating Grizzly Bear mode, as Izuku would go on to start, putting on the moves on Momo, right? You know what I'm saying? Like making sure that she knows, ish me, you know what I'm saying? Ish me, it's ish me, Deku, you know what I'm saying? And from here, he goes on to rizz her up a little bit, and they have a pretty good time, not gonna lie. They have a pretty good convo, and Momo goes on to share with Izuku a couple of things, with Izuku telling Momo that she has such an incredible quirk, and them pretty much drinking, let's say that they drink the Kern's mango juice, because she just so happens to love it or something. Why am I saying that? Because I was just drinking one like 10 minutes ago. That said though, continuing on with the story, we find ourselves at the UA Sports Festival event, and Izuku would actually be the one who gives out the speech for the UA Sports Festival event to start, right? What would end up happening after this is we end up finding ourselves in a very, very cool situation in terms of what would end up happening is Midnight goes on to shine the starter's pistol, and Izuku would end up easily just teleporting straight to the finish line, being the first one to pass and giving nobody else a chance to even come close. Izuku having a teleporting quirk, this would have been an easy breezy flash in the park. And from here would come the cavalry battle, which Izuku would specifically pick Kaminari out from the rest, and from here Mei Hatsume as well as Momo would go over towards him, seeing as he was the winner, and Momo kind of has a little bit of an established friendship with Deku now, seeing as they ended up hanging out that day and getting their own texting information. Izuku and Momo having a bit of a flirtatious relationship now, and Momo having a very keen liking towards Midoriya. Continuing this, Izuku using his teleportation quirk would just teleport around grabbing all the headbands, and whenever anybody would try to retaliate, Deku teleports the team around. Bam here, bam over there, bam I'm over there, bam I'm over there. And so this would pretty much just lead Deku and his team to have an easy pass for that portion. Ultimately, jumping into what happens next, we would then have the 1v1 battles which Izuku has to face off against Shinso. Now, normally I would be like, alright, Shinso wins just due to the fact that Izuku is probably going to respond to him, but I don't think Izuku would do that this time. I genuinely speaking think that the second that the battle would start, Shinso would try to open his mouth, but Deku would teleport behind him, teleport over towards, over on top of the grass, drop Shinso and teleport right back onto the arena, as the proctor would say, Izuku Midoriya is the winner! Present Mike screaming that out loud in such a crazy way, as everybody else watching would say, wow, that kid's quirk is truly something else. And from here, Shinso would smash at the floor, thinking to himself that he's not going to be losing any more to that guy. And from here, Izuku goes on to pretty much make his way towards the next battle, that being against Todoroki. Now, Todoroki still does approach Izuku, trying to pretty much intimidate him and telling him that he's not going to be winning regardless of his quirk, and that strategy that he used on Shinso, not happening to him. He's going to make sure of it. From here, Izuku walks away and just teleports into the hallway, going on to overhear a conversation between All Might and Endeavor, as Izuku from here thinks to himself that Endeavor truly is kind of a D-head, because it's like, how are you going to not show respect to, at the very minimum, the #1 hero of the world, since you're his #2, to put it lightly? And from here, what would pretty much end up happening is that Izuku would make his way towards the ring for the second battle after having supported Kaminari, who ultimately would have ended up losing to the plant girl. Kaminari being upset, but Izuku cheering him up, telling him that it was just his unlucky day. Her quirk quite literally is the perfect counter to Kaminari, and she has such a nullification quirk on Kaminari that it wouldn't have made a difference how much electricity he outputted when it comes to facing off against that girl in particular. And so we jump on to a different situation in which now Izuku finds himself in the ring against Todoroki, who at this point would be shooting an icy glare at Deku, which Deku would easily ignore, going on to look at the crowd and simply say, 3 seconds, Todoroki. 3 seconds is all I need to get you out. And I'm not even going to be using the ring as a technical outing, right? From here, Todoroki would say, what are you talking about? And Izuku from here goes on to pretty much teleport right in front of Todoroki, and with a powerful blow that Izuku would have studied for a minute now. Like, he would have teleported right by Todoroki, and with a powerful blow that he would have hit at the exact perfect spot, Todoroki would get knocked out instantly with one perfect blow that Izuku would have landed directly in Todoroki's temple, leading Todoroki's body to fall straight to the ground and Izuku's name to be called out as the winner. People saying that Izuku has #1 potential type quirk, right? And Izuku would be just feeling himself after having pretty much beaten Todoroki, his biggest threat when it comes to this thing, ultimately noticing that Bakugo ended up making his way towards the finals. Izuku smiling to himself internally, thinking to himself that it's about time that he got some payback on Bakugo for all of those times that he thought he could bully him, and more specifically for almost being the reason that Izuku did actually end up killing himself. Obviously Bakugo wouldn't have been the one who have done it, but he definitely would have been the one reason that Izuku would have had to push him over the edge. Bakugo is quite literally Izuku's 13 reasons why. And so jumping into that battle, what pretty much ends up going down is Izuku would teleport over towards Bakugo, right? As soon as it starts, Bakugo throwing an explosion at Izuku, trying to predict where Izuku would have appeared, and it would have actually ended up working. Izuku getting hit with a powerful explosion, with Izuku thinking to himself that he might have just started guessing his pattern. Izuku thinking, oh well, not like he could get me from long range, and Bakugo from here would have to come closer to Izuku, which Izuku would teleport to the most obvious spot, which Bakugo wasn't expecting whatsoever, and Izuku would land a blow on Bakugo, which would have actually almost landed on the same spot as Todoroki, but Bakugo turned his head slightly, and that was just enough to get Izuku to pretty much end up missing and still do heavy damage, but not enough to take Bakugo out. Bakugo from here goes on to throw an explosion, which Izuku would dodge using his teleportation quirk, and Izuku would continue dodging and dodging and dodging and dodging and dodging. Bakugo not being able to do a single thing about it, and Izuku then landing punch after punch after punch. Izuku just pummeling Bakugo in a way that Bakugo hasn't been used to, before ultimately teleporting all the way up to the sky where, Bakugo's literally in space, not being able to breathe, oxygen being so thin, and then him just teleporting right back onto the ground with him pointing up and everybody in the crowd looking up as they would see Bakugo falling down using his explosion quirk, trying to propel himself to the earth as fast as he can. Bakugo charging up a howitzer impact as Izuku, noticing that Bakugo was about to hit him with a powerful attack, just teleported out of the way. Bakugo realizing this, having to hold out on the attack, and the guy who could use the mud quirk or the concrete quirk, Mr. Cementos or something like that. Yeah, Cementos would end up using his quirk to minimize the impact of Bakugo's howitzer impact, which would be 2 times as massive as usual, considering that he had the force of like falling down from high distances to propel himself. From here, Izuku teleports back onto the ring to see a Bakugo who would have done his own undoing, and he would then lift his own hands up as he would say, "I won!" with everybody in the crowd beginning to cheer, and Inko, who would be watching from the stands, breaking out in tears, as in such comedic anime fashion, tears would begin forming a river, with Izuku rushing towards the direction of his mother, blitzing there immediately, and Todoroki, watching this battle as he thinks to himself that Bakugo never stood a chance, and that since the fact that this was like a ring and knockout type of deal, Izuku is just so deadly. His ability to just teleport wherever he wants to without anybody being able to do anything about it is so deadly that if Izuku was a villain, he would probably be the most dangerous villain ever. If he was able to use like death, like assassin like techniques, just teleporting behind somebody and slitting their throat would be as easy as it would be for Deku to be the best killer in the world. He's sure glad that Izuku's on their side. But ultimately, what ends up going down is Izuku ends up getting his medals, Bakugo ends up getting 2nd place, Todoroki coming in 3rd, and ultimately the sports festival ending, leading to all of the students finding themselves back at class where they would all begin talking about how fun the sports festival was. Eventually, Aizawa would end up introducing Midnight to the classroom once more, as she would go on to tell them that she's here to help them out with their hero names as well as their hero internships. Everybody going on to pick their own names, as Izuku would pick the name Zap, since he can zap anywhere in an instant. And it was actually a name that just popped up in my head randomly. I didn't think about it at all, but I actually think it sounds kind of cool. What do y'all think? But no, going on to who he's going to be interning with, since Izuku doesn't exactly have the quirk of One for All this time, we're actually going to be having him intern with a different hero. Now, this is where I want you guys to pick who he's going to be interning with for the next part of this What If. But continuing on with the story, Izuku would find himself on the bus as he would stand right outside of his pro heroes agency that he's now going to be interning with, looking up as he sees some sort of billboard that says fandom, wondering to himself, what's fandom? Well, let me explain.
As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel.
But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code Xehther at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video. Izuku walks inside of a building only to notice a lanky man, green hair, and a bit of a yellow hint to it, one part of it being dyed. Izuku walking over towards the man, he sees him and sees Sir Nighteye, All Might's old sidekick. And from here, he would ask him, hey, you're Sir Nighteye. As Sir Nighteye looks towards the direction of Izuku and says, yeah, anyways, kid, I saw your performance in the sports festival and I have to say, I'm quite impressed. I have a question for you. I want to know something about your quirk. How does it work? Do you have to be able to see the thing that you were teleporting to, or is it something that you just have to think about? With Izuku looking at the direction of Sir Nighteye and saying, I just have to think about it. I can think about anything, teleport there, and come back whenever I feel like it. Sir Nighteye would look at the direction of Izuku, grabbing at his chin and saying, interesting. As from here, he goes on to tell him that during his time here, he's going to be learning 3 main things. Number 1, unpredictability. Number 2, combat skills. And number 3, the ability to run a hero agency. Those are the 3 things that Izuku is going to be working on with Sir Nighteye. And number 4, Sir Nighteye would say how to be calm in a very, very uncertain situation and how to read his opponents like a book. That one, they might not get to. So for now, just focus on the first 3. And so the week would start. Izuku would start everything off by learning unpredictability from Sir Nighteye. Now, Sir Nighteye having the ability of a quirk that allows him to see into the future slightly would easily be able to keep up with Izuku's teleportation, with Sir Nighteye being the only person who could probably counter Izuku, knowing exactly what Izuku's gonna do before he even does it. Every time that Izuku would try to hit Sir Nighteye, he would not be able to land it, seeing as Izuku's blows were so straightforward that Sir Nighteye was able to dodge them almost instantly. They would continue this for about 3 days until eventually Izuku would finally get a decent grasp over how to be sort of unpredictable, I guess you could say, right? Now, Izuku learning this skill from Sir Nighteye would begin to be a much better fighter up close, and Sir Nighteye would actually begin being very much so impressed by Izuku. Izuku is somewhat of a wet towel when it comes to absorbing information, and Izuku was able to absorb it very, very rapidly, a lot faster than his tutor, the person that he's training, Mirio, obviously. And he would congratulate Izuku for that, thinking to himself how powerful this kid would have been had he had the ability of One for All. Being able to teleport in at a moment's notice, handling villains, that would be a great hero to have. But that's just a dream for now, seeing as Mirio with his quirk will make just as good of a number 1 symbol of peace. And so what ends up happening because of this is we end up getting a situation in which Izuku from here would start learning more about how to run a hero agency, being taught about the different levels, about what each different department of agency does, being taught about how to properly hero patrol, how to keep your staff under check, how to select different people for the hero patrolling system. And it would be on the 3rd day that Sir Nighteye would get a phone call. Now, Sir Nighteye would go over to check the phone, and when he does, Sir Nighteye would immediately drop it onto the ground, looking towards the direction of Izuku before saying, we have to go to Hosu City now. It's only about 40 minutes away. Can you get us there? And Izuku would say, sure, immediately grabbing onto Sir Nighteye and one of Sir Nightae's sidekicks, as they teleport straight over to Hosu City, and Izuku would notice all of the carnage that would be going down. Those strange creatures would be running amok again, with Izuku wondering to himself, didn't All Might defeat one of those? Like, from what he remembers, those things were way too powerful for even him to handle. So Izuku would pretty much just be in charge of saving people who were about to get hit by crossfires, for saving people in buildings and stuff like that. And Izuku's mostly going to be a rescue hero when it comes to things that aren't like, when it comes to villains that are very tanky, that he can't really attack or hurt with basic means. Izuku doesn't have any real weapons on him, so he would pretty much end up teleporting around, going towards an alleyway where he would try to find like some glass or something, only to see that Ida was there about to get stabbed by Stain. Izuku teleported into Stain, holding him by the back and teleporting him into a large body of water, teleporting him into pretty much the ocean, as Stain would wonder to himself how he got there and would be completely shocked. Izuku grabbing Ida and teleporting him to the hospital immediately, as Ida would be able to get patched up very quickly, and then the hero native would easily be able to jump back into the battle with everybody else who was trying to get their own thing done, right? And by the time that Izuku would teleport back to the main battle area, he would notice that pro hero Endeavor was definitely getting the job done, taking out Nomus left and right, already having taken 2 out, as a Nomu would end up lunging in and grabbing an innocent bystander easily, going on to take her to the air, as it would let out a loud screech, and Izuku would teleport up into the air, grabbing the girl and teleporting out of there as fast as possible, with Endeavor throwing a flame arrow at the direction of the Nomu, leading to the Nomu crashing onto the ground. Izuku teleporting towards it and teleporting it right over towards Endeavor, telling him to finish it off, with Endeavor using cremation flames, or just like very hot blue flames, to just melt the Nomu completely. And ultimately Izuku would be put as one of the main reasons that they actually won. It was great. It was really great for them to see, because Izuku was capable of putting up such a good effort when it comes to this event that it was almost nobody got injured, except for those that Izuku couldn't tell were definitely getting hurt by the debris, or the other people that were there before Izuku got there, right? But those were really the only people that ended up getting injured, and there were no casualties whatsoever on this event because of Izuku. Izuku's efforts on the battlefield were incredible, and because of this, Izuku was pretty much known as the MVP of the Hosu City event on the news and all over the media, with even Endeavor saying that kid, once he becomes a pro hero, will be one of the most helpful support heroes ever, and that whoever gets him in their agency is going to be blessed. So Endeavor's now looking towards sending Izuku some words of encouragement for him, and because Izuku was there with Sir Nighteye, Izuku returned back to the agency and returned to doing his own training with Sir Nighteye. Now, the training would finish off with being relatively simple, with the with the first, second, and third point being accomplished, and the fourth one not so much. But ultimately, Izuku finds himself back at school only to be put up with a little bit of a test, a little bit of a combat race to see who can find All Might first, just to see how much they've grown due to their new experiences, and everybody would have shown some very unique progress, right? But ultimately, after that would be taken care of, we would now jump into a situation in which they're finally in the final exams portion of everything, and Izuku would be studying alongside with the group that Momo was going to be tutoring. So Izuku and Momo got to hang out a little bit more, and eventually we would make it to the day where Izuku has to face off against his own opponent. However, because of Izuku's teleportation quirk, the option of actually teleporting away was just going to be the only thing that Izuku was going to try to use, and all of the heroes that were there just knew that there was going to be no real feasible way to stop Izuku from winning if he truly wanted to. So instead, Principal Nezu told Izuku that as a handicap, he needs to not use that move to get away. Like, he can't do that immediately. He has to do that as a last resort, and his opponent is going to be, now are y'all ready for this? All Might. Now, I know originally I was thinking to myself like, maybe we should or shouldn't give him to All Might, but then I started thinking, nah, it definitely has to be All Might. Actually, no. For the first time, Izuku's now going to have to be put up against somebody who can cancel his quirk in Aizawa. Because if he faces off against All Might, what's All Might going to do? But with Aizawa, they're going to start the battle off immediately in one certain location. And with Izuku's quirk getting cancelled because of Aizawa, Izuku can't exactly just start teleporting all over the place. His teammate would be Katsuki Bakugo, who would lunge at the direction of Aizawa, and because both of them rely heavily on their quirks, both of them not having access to them and Aizawa being such a good close combat fighter would cause a bunch of huge difficulties for Bakugo and Izuku. However, Izuku, using the training that Sir Nighteye had taught him when it comes to unpredictability, would end up running away from the field of vision of Aizawa, so Aizawa, just wouldn't know where he was. Quirk still being cancelled because Aizawa was still not blinking, but eventually Izuku decided to just hide. and ultimately know where Aizawa is by getting the high ground and leading Aizawa not to know where he is. Aizawa thinking that the kid's smart, with Bakugo continuing to try to fight him head on, but Aizawa pretty much putting him on his ass immediately. Following this would lead to Izuku then arriving and pretty much teleporting in right behind Aizawa as he restrains him, and he would tell Bakugo, "Do it now!" As Bakugo, for a split second that Aizawa would blink, Bakugo comes in with an explosion and straight dink right to the gut of Aizawa, sending Aizawa flying back, as Izuku would teleport over with Aizawa's eyes closed for a brief instant and then wrap him around with the capture tape, leading to them being the ultimate winners of this. Had it not been for Izuku's, efforts, they definitely would have lost, because Aizawa is one of those characters that for most people, it's probably going to be an instant GG. Like, say for All Might himself, I genuinely do think that if Aizawa and All Might were to have fought, like even in All Might's prime, I genuinely think that Aizawa himself would have ended up besting All Might, just because, the dude is super, super, super reliant on his quirk. So I think that if Aizawa was a villain, bro would literally be the end all be all villain in the story. Like if Aizawa was the final villain, that'd be crazy. But that's just my opinion. Anyways though, jumping back into the story, we cut back into a moment when everybody's told about the forest training camp, right? And after all of that happens, they're all immediately excited to go there, with Uraraka bringing up the idea that they should probably go to the mall, check it out and see what's happening. And so everybody would do so. Immediately, as soon as this would happen, Momo from this point would look towards the direction of Izuku, as she would ask him if, he potentially wants to go get a bite to eat. Izuku saying, yeah, of course. And from here, Momo and Izuku would begin walking towards the direction of some random pretzel shop, right? But it would be here where Shigaraki would end up making his presence known and grabbing onto the throat of Izuku. Izuku immediately feeling this and hearing the voice of Shigaraki telling him that, unless he wants to die, he better not move, Izuku would instantly teleport over towards Aizawa, and knowing that Aizawa was back in UA, would immediately step in front of him, with Aizawa realizing that Izuku was there and instantly activating his quirk, noting that Izuku would not have arrived for no random reason. Shigaraki, as he would place his other finger on Izuku's neck, would be completely powerless, as Aizawa would immediately handcuff Shigaraki, and Shigaraki would be shipped off to Tartarus, where bro would just spend the rest of his days there, right? But now, continuing on with what's going on, Izuku immediately teleports back behind Momo, who wouldn't have even noticed that he was gone, because mind you, this all would have happened within the span of like 15 seconds. Izuku would say he's sorry, he was just tying his shoes. And from here, Momo would be like, oh right, perfect, going on to take her wallet and offering to pay. But Izuku would say, look, even though I know you're rich, I can't let you pay for me. If I'm here, I can't let you pay for me. And Momo would be like, oh, trust me, it's no problem. I want to spend my money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really get the chance to spend it all the time. But Izuku saying, no, we can spend mine. And he gives her his money and says, spend that. And then she's like, okay. And then from here, she walks over towards the register and gets 2 little pepperoni pretzels, and they get down, you know what I'm saying? And afterwards, they go and get their mosquito anti-repellent spray. And eventually, they finally would find themselves on the bus making their way towards the camp. Once they would arrive on top of the hill, Aizawa and Mandalay would make it very well known that that's their stop. But for them, they're going to take the bus for the rest of the trip. And so the rest of the students would be flung down the mountain, with all of them immediately realizing that they're going to have a pretty long way there. And so all of them start, only to realize that they're also just so happening to going to have to face off against some very, very, very scary monsters. Izuku would say, y'all have fun with that, but me personally, as he then looks to Momo, who would give him this expression of like, ain't no way he's going to leave us. And Izuku grabs on a Momo and Kaminari, mind you, and would teleport straight over towards the direction of where the camp is at. As from here, the Wild Pussycats who would be at the camp already would be shocked, thinking to themselves that how did they already get there? Like it would have taken them hours, with one of them noting, oh, that's the teleporting kid. Should have expected as much, as Aizawa did tell us you might be arriving early. So he told us that we should set this up for you. And so Momo and Kaminari would be let to go free, but Izuku Izuku would have extracurricular lessons because he did that. And Aizawa, knowing that Izuku was most likely going to do it, definitely made sure that it was not going to be nothing that was going to be a walk in the park for Izuku, considering that he wants Izuku to know that you can't just breeze through life using your quirk all silly-nilly. Sometimes you have to go through with the trials and tribulations in front of you without relying on that ability. He thought he taught him that during the final exam, but he guesses he's gonna have to beat it into him yet, you know? And so what happens after this is eventually we would find ourselves on the day where the heroes would actually end up having to face off against the villains. Now, Bakugo still is going to be getting kidnapped just due to the fact that once Izuku sees Muscular, he's not going to be like, oh, I'm gonna fight him, like I can do it. He's going to grab Koda and teleport out of there immediately, leaving Muscular to scream out in anger and say, get back here, rushing towards the direction of the main camp building with nobody there to pretty much take out Muscular except for the only person who could actually take him out easily, Aizawa. Aizawa, using his quirk, would immediately go over towards Muscular, canceling it, as Muscular would try to bulk up, but he can't. And so Izuku would teleport in with Aizawa and they would both beat the living daylights out of him, as Muscular would be sitting there knowing that he's gonna get beat considering he relies so much on his muscles. Without that, how strong is he really? He's still very strong, but he's not half as strong as he would be with that muscle quirk, and Izuku's blows can actually leave a very dense impact on him. Izuku, using these sort of enhanced punching like his gauntlets, would easily be able to break Muscular's jaw, and so many of the other villains that would be there would easily be found by Izuku, with him teleporting all of the students in the forest out of there before anything dangerous could potentially happen, right? And it would be at this moment that as Izuku was teleporting closer and closer towards the direction of Bakugo, a portal would end up actually opening in front of himself, Todoroki, and Bakugo, as a black mist would come from the floor and a man with a large Darth Vader looking mask would appear, all for one, clapping in very, very ominous, evil, egotistical villain fashion, with Izuku looking towards his direction and asking him what he thinks he's doing here, all for one saying that he's heard quite a couple of things from his underlings, and that he would like to have a word with him if he pleases, as Izuku would say, I would never talk to a villain like you, and All For One would say, I think you'll find that I can be very persuasive, going on to hold his hand out and instantly beginning to shoot a beam of dark, he would just shoot these black tendrils at the direction of Bakugo, right? Going on to stab him and inject him with poison, saying, look, I've recently acquired a quirk that allows me to poison people and kill them in 5 minutes. If you don't have a conversation with me, boy, I'm afraid you're gonna have to watch him die, seeing as I'm the only person with a cure. And so Izuku just has to sit there powerless, looking towards the direction of All For One, as he would think to himself that how's he gonna get out of this one? There's no way. And so he's forced to just talk with All For One. All For One going on to tell him all that he can give to him. He can give him power. He can rule the world alongside him with an iron fist. A quirk like that, it's even more powerful than Kurogiri's warping ability. And with Izuku by his side, they can accomplish so much. All For One could make a copy of Deku's ability, and he could have his own version of it as well. They would both be unstoppable. And Izuku would simply be thinking to himself how in the world he's gonna solve this dilemma, because All For One is there, and Izuku knows himself that he's not gonna be able to take out All For One by himself. Not even in his wildest dreams will Izuku be able to do that. And so what pretty much ends up happening is that Izuku would go over towards the direction of All For One, beginning to get closer and closer until zap, Deku just teleports off, and All For One says, I knew you would resist, going over towards Bakugo's direction and saying, sorry kid, but it appears like your classmate doesn't exactly want you to live. And instead of Izuku going over and grabbing All Might or something like that, Izuku would have just teleported right behind All For One, as from here Izuku knows what he has to do. And so Izuku would take out one of the knives that he would have in his pocket and dink, straight slash open the throat of All For One, killing him in a fashion that All For One would have never expected. All For One might have been expecting a powerful attack, but to be killed Never. All For One's throat would begin spouting out blood as Izuku immediately grabs onto All For One, who would be grabbing at his neck as it slowly starts regenerating, and All For One looks at the direction of Izuku, but Izuku would just say, "Out with the trash," as from here, Izuku would teleport All For One into outer space, and All For One would just be stuck there floating mindlessly in the limitless boundary of space, just floating in the abyss, with All For One just completely unable to do anything, right? And so what pretty much ends up happening after this is that Izuku would end up returning back down, only for Bakugo to be shocked. Like, he does end up getting the antidote because of Izuku, actually ending up taking him to a hospital where, he was able to eventually be saved due to another person who had a quirk. A doctor who would have had a nullification quirk, where they have the ability to create an antidote or be an antidote for anybody, and all he has to do is bite his skin, like bite and suck his blood. And so Bakugo does that, getting the antidote and eventually being healed. And yes, I know that is Karin's ability from Naruto, but I figured that somebody in the My Hero Academia universe could probably manifest a quirk like that. I mean, it's not the craziest thing that's happened, right? But so, continuing on with what happens, we end up jumping into a situation in which Izuku would find himself in the provisional license quirk exam, where Izuku would end up ultimately passing easy peasy lemon squeezy, and then meeting big three hero Mirio Togata, Nejire Hato, and Tamaki, right? Sun Eater. I don't really know his last name, but Mirio does challenge the entire school to fight, and after hearing all the good things that he's heard about Izuku, would definitely be sure to go all out with him. Izuku may be fast when it comes to the art of teleporting, but Mirio, he is just as fast, and he has the ability of phasing, so Izuku can't exactly hit him, and so they would kind of be left in a motion of just complete standstill, right? Where Mirio, he can't get hurt by Izuku, and Mirio can't exactly hurt Izuku. And it's funny to me, considering that this is almost the same situation that I run into with all of my Dekus. Mirio has just such a strange quirk that makes him almost impossible to beat by most normal villains. His ability of permeation is so broken and busted that I don't think many of us really take into account just how powerful the ability of just being able to not be tangible is. I mean, Obito was one of the most broken characters in Naruto just because of that. And Mirio, now with the power of One for All, has an ability mirror-like to what Obito had. So with both of them there, it would be an easy stomp when it comes to when they both finally encounter the villain known as Overhaul, once all of this would be said and done. And because Sir Nighteye and Deku would already be accustomed to each other, once Mirio and Izuku would be sent off to patrol and they bump into Overhaul and Eri, Izuku would immediately teleport Eri out of there to a police station, which Overhaul would get angry at and begin to, well, overhaul Mirio. But Mirio, using his phasing ability, would walk straight through the debris and the rocks that he would have shot at Mirio, and Mirio would send Overhaul crashing into a wall with a 40% One for All full cowling punch, and Overhaul would immediately get sent flying and knocked out, with Mirio screaming, "Power!" Izuku immediately teleporting back in, only to see that Overhaul would have already been defeated, with him saying, "You couldn't save some for me, could you?" And Mirio holding the back of his head in such a similar fashion to Goku, letting out a very, very comedic laugh. Eventually, this being the last panel that we're going to be seeing for the What If, and everything wrapping up in a nice, neat little bow. Izuku, after the many other 2 years that he has in UA, would end up getting together with Momo and opening his own hero agency, which would have Momo being one of his co-workers or sidekick or whatever, and their agency would actually be very, very fruitful because of the fact that he took a lot of notes from Sir Nighteye and a lot of notes from a bunch of other heroes that he would have had around himself. So Izuku would become a very, very popular hero, never exactly making it to #1 because that spot was reserved for Mirio. However, Izuku would become very powerful and very well recognized, with some people actually having Izuku being, their favorite hero instead of Mirio, right? Just because of how much lives Izuku saves. Izuku actually saves more lives than Mirio, but Mirio is just so much more inspirational, right? And so That, ladies and gentlemen, is where What If Deku Had a Teleportation Quirk finally comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed this 3-part series, and if you did, definitely make sure to slap that like button and hitting that subscriber button, seeing as I'm trying to get to 100k by the end of the year, and your support would definitely be greatly appreciated. That said, I love each and every single one of you guys, and it has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.